Hello, and welcome to What It Takes, where we like to take a look at learning from a holistic perspective. My guest today prides herself and her organization as being great collaborators, and when you look at all the ways that United Way of the Roanoke Valley is trying to help the region, it becomes clear why collaborating is so important. Abby Hamilton was named CEO of the United Way of the Roanoke Valley after the departure of another dynamic leader, Afida DeVries. I'm honored to have you as a guest on What It Takes.
So excited to be here.
So glad to have you here. I always like to start these programs by just asking, how did you get here? What brought you to being the CEO of a large nonprofit here in the region?
Well, I think it's a 20-year journey for me. I was born and raised in the Philippines, so my background has really been around exposing myself to societal challenges like poverty. And I came here with my family in 2002, found myself in a position at United Way starting in the Resource Development Department and really grew up within the organization. So I'm going to be entering my 20th year with United Way next year. And so I think it's just an evolution of skill and talent, and really how do you hone somebody internally and grow them within a position.
I think it's really interesting to see that you started and developed yourself almost kind of internally.
Yes.
As you look at your employees and coworkers now,
yes.
Are you just kind of always on the look?
Oh, absolutely. I'm like, if I know that what I want is for my story not to be an exception, but for us to continue to grow talent from within and really groom the next person that could be me. So
I got to know your predecessor, Afida, pretty well while she was here, and I sent her a message this week just to say, I'm going to have Abby on the show, and she just could not say enough good things about you. What do you think you learned from her and other people as as mentors and supporters as you've grown professionally?
Wow. I have been very, very lucky to have been in an organization where I got to meet and work with a lot of people like Afida, people on our board, people that have been on staff, and I'm always very grateful for, I think for Afida in particular, what she taught me was really owning my own story and my own journey as a woman leader, and also acknowledging that as a minority leader, I do have a unique value that I can bring to the table, and to be able to embrace that and the fullness of myself to be able to bring that to work every single day.
Just as an aside, you told a little story when you came in earlier. You were very excited to see Cookie Monster here in the studio.
Yes.
Talk about your relationship with PBS.
I was going to say, I thought you were going to say my relationship with Cookie Monster. I've always been a big fan of PBS. Growing up in the Philippines, we had access to programming through PBS, and I grew up watching Sesame Street and the shows that were provided through public stations, and I learned English there. I learned my basic Spanish words from there, learned how to count colors, all of the good stuff that we always pick up from public TV, and Sesame Street is still one of my favorite shows.
Well, thanks for that glowing endorsement. Now, you became CEO, am I correct, in January of 2020. Mm-hmm. Interesting time to take the reins of an organization, especially as we look forward to what was going to be happening then. When you did your kind of perspective on being the leader of the United Way change within those few months when COVID became a reality?
Yeah, definitely. I think the good part about my journey to that leadership position is being in circles where I already knew that part of United Way's approach and our approach in general as nonprofits had to evolve to correspond to the changing and evolving challenges of society. And so by the time that I got to be CEO, there were a couple of things that I knew immediately that I wanted to build within the culture of United Way and reinforce that, and when we partner outside with other organizations in the community.
And so I have been asking everybody this season. Now that we've got a little distance past March of last year, when the word came down that all of a sudden things were shutting down, you all, you oversee a lot of different have connections with a lot of different folks in the region. What went through your mind then at that time, and how did you all pivot, or were there things you were already doing that were just reinforced?
Yeah, so the beautiful thing about the fact that United Way had already shifted to a model where we were intentionally working in a collaborative structure. So we would have gatherings and convenings of multiple partners, 20, 40 partners on a regular basis to discuss, to strategize, to plan action together. And so it was really a matter of a call to action when the governor shut everything down back in March. It was truly several days worth of just sending out emails to people to say, hey, let's go ahead and begin meeting as a group of nonprofit partners on a regular basis so that we know and we have ears on the ground. And then we can use that time as we gather on a weekly basis to just strategize on how we can all collectively pivot and fill in gaps as we find them.
I'm going to back up just a little bit, but it occurs to me that some people may be watching this. United Way has great kind of logo and brand recognition nationally, but I'm not sure everybody understands exactly what it is. So what is United Way?
Yes, United Way, well, for here in our local level, we are an organization that is really committed to making sure that we elevate 10,000 families to self-sufficiency. How do we do that? We do that truly by partnering with organizations that are already on the ground doing fabulous work around education, health, and the financial stability of families. We are independent organizations, so we have our own board, we make our own decisions based on local needs, but we're also part of a global network of United Ways where we get a lot of leverage and are able to maximize impact that way. So I think there's about 1,800 of us worldwide.
I know that you have a really strong interest in, when you talk about the things that United Way does, a lot of it starts with early childhood education, interventions. How are you all supporting that early learning, and what makes that such an important focus given all the things that your member agencies do?
Yeah, I think our United Way's history with early childhood and really early education success has very deep roots. But by the time that I started at United Way in 2002, we already had like a few years into it, invested or were part of a national partnership called Success by Six. So at that time, Bank of America had invested some grant money for United Ways across the country to focus on increasing awareness of why we needed to invest in early childhood development, why it was so important, and then to begin setting the groundwork for supporting childcare providers, teachers, and those that were already in the field, and support them through quality improvement work. So when I started, that was kind of the original foray of United Way into that space, and it's, of course, evolved since then.
And how do you, when you explain to people what your goals are, how do you talk about the way that what you can do in those Success by Six, in those years before 6 years old?
Yeah.
How does that help us fix a lot of other problems that we have in society?
There is a wonderful study by an economist, he's a Nobel Prize winning economist, James Heckman, who said that the best investment that we could ever make as a society in terms of where we get the biggest gains and where we get the biggest payoff in terms of society in general will be investing in early childhood education. The returns can be up to $17 for every dollar that's invested in that issue. There's also a lot of study by folks that were here or are still here with Virginia Tech Fralin Biomedical Institute, the Ramies, Craig and Sharon Ramey, who have conducted longitudinal studies worth 40 years running, right, where they're proving that interventions at that age equalize opportunity for people. It essentially eliminates a lot of barriers for people that would have existed if kids were in a situation of poverty or other disadvantages that they might have.
And you have a lot of collaborators in that effort. Tell me about some of them.
Yes. The wonderful thing about the early education space is you've got the traditional partners, right? Like the public school system, childcare providers, Head Start, parents with young children. But I think one of the things that we also are learning about how important this space is that business leaders are also partners in it, because we are growing the workforce of the future. And because childcare is actually often a barrier for people going into the workforce. So if people are needing a stable workforce, they are going to rely on childcare, whether or not it's from very early ages or up until kids are in school. And then another thing that I kind of think about in terms of partners that we've seen is people that also don't have children, right, but have an inherent need in making sure that families are successful. Because whether or not it has to do with outcomes in health, financial stability, employment, or other things, a lot of them can be linked to childhood and also early childhood experiences.
And I noticed in reading your annual report, I read your annual report this week, you set very specific goals for how you are going to determine whether or not the organization and the organizations that work with you are being successful. Can you talk about some of those very specific goals?
Yes. So several years ago, United Way and our board of directors challenged ourselves to say, let's set a North Star for ourselves, which is let us try to shoot for 10,000 families to self-sufficiency by 2030. So therein is the first marker, right? In that span of time, what do we need to do in order to move that needle? And we landed on identifying several goal areas around school readiness, third grade reading levels, because we know those are indicators for future success, and then readiness and success of youth in graduation, and then also career readiness, and then looking at the overall wellness of families and their stability. And those together, if we focus in on those indicators, kind of lead up to that big goal of 10,000 families to self-sufficiency.
And then there's a literacy goal. I think it's increasing third grade literacy from 79 to 90%, which is a lofty goal. How much time do you give yourselves to do that, and how is that measured?
Right. Well, we have until 2030 to make progress. So thank goodness. And I think we're kind of close to that. What we measure too are indicators that are leading up to school readiness. So we don't get to measure that until they show up in school, right? But in the meantime, there are other indicators as children are growing and developing. So measuring what is called, using a tool called Ages and Stages, where we are actually able to track the healthy development of children, and parents at home can do that. In partnership with also their healthcare provider. And then there are other markers of the healthy social and emotional development of children as well, that all again contribute to their school readiness when they show up.
And on the very ground level, I know you do work and promote work with parents and kids. What are some things that you encourage parents to do to help you meet your goals? I mean, and to help them, of course, raise readers and productive members of society and all of that.
Well, first of all, I think we recognize that healthy development starts with healthy pregnancies, right? So pregnant moms in particular, they need to be able to access the health care that they need. They have to be in safe environments so that they have the proper prenatal experiences that kind of lead up to healthy births. And then as children are growing up, we truly encourage parents to kind of read to their children, to interact with them, to know what they could expect as children are developing at what point in time. And there's a great resource that United Ways also kind of have available for parents called Bright by Text, wherein parents can sign up and they get text messages from their cell phones with reminders of activities, resources that are available that kind of keep them up to speed on and give them a little assistance as they're growing.
And I'm guessing those are kind of targeted to what kind of parents they are, or where their kids are?
Yes, the age and where they live. So it's available right here for anybody to kind of sign up.
And I think we all recognize that, equity in our society in general, huge issue, right? Where you go to school, what zip code you are born in, has a lot to do with your opportunity to be successful. How are you all targeting those who need it most to promote that equity?
Yeah, I think it begins first with like understanding where inequity lies. And so that involves looking at the data very thoroughly, not just as United Way, but in partnership with other entities, with the school system, with Head Start, with private childcare, and then creating those relationships also at the state level so that we can direct funding, not just local funding and local efforts, but also at the policy level, about identifying where those vulnerabilities lie within our community and the greatest disparities lie, and then specifically making sure that we are reaching out to those populations and targeting messages to make sure that they are reached, and we make that extra effort to make quality learning experiences available and accessible to them.
I noticed one of your other goals, I think, is reducing the regional poverty rate. I think it's from 13% to 9%. Those numbers are available, but what a hard thing to, that one feels a little harder to know exactly how to accomplish that. What methods are you using for that?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think one of the things that we've looked at is really a change in how United Way executes on its work, which is recognizing that things are interrelated. And when households are struggling with resources, with financial issues, they can be rooted, the solutions need to be matched with increasing complexity. It can be around employment, food access, housing, all of these different things that impact their overall well-being, healthcare, their access to that. And so when one of the strategies really is to make sure that when we approach families, we ask their needs in a holistic manner. And then we as service providers kind of coordinate those efforts to make it easy for them. And then that pathway becomes something that is directed by the family itself. So it's not predetermined by us as organizations on what we want to do, but really relying on what families want to see and their own vision for their families, and for us to be there to support them on that journey.
And I know that you guys work fairly closely with the Department of Education to help accomplish their goals. What does that look like for you all in terms of how active are you with that collaboration, and are you providing input to them? Are they tell me a little bit about that relationship.
Yeah, it's really exciting because United Way is serving as the regional hub for a lot of the early childhood work that's happening here in our region. And so we are one hub across the state doing that. We are a part of a network, a national network led by the Virginia Early Childhood Foundation, started many, many years ago in partnership with them. And so we've always been in a position where we have worked closely to either test something, to innovate an approach, to present our findings, and then have the opportunity to provide feedback for things that the state might be thinking about doing. We try it here in the Roanoke Valley and then give them feedback and say, this isn't going to work, or this is probably going to be a better approach. And so we were able to test such an example with a coordinated enrollment system for childcare. So we are a test case here in the region, actually for the Commonwealth of Virginia, where we said, I think we can pull off multiple localities, multiple school systems, childcare providers, Head Start, to share in one platform that will allow any parent looking for childcare to go to one place, provide the information once, and be screened for their eligibility and placed in quality childcare. So that was the challenge that we placed ourselves, and I think we did a pretty good job because the system is up and running.
That's a heavy lift, because I know I've been involved in student information systems and parent things in my other lives, and what a big task that my head is kind of spinning on that. When it comes to that, there aren't a lot of common resources. I think about where you send your child for preschool or all of that. Really, a lot of time it is, who do you know?
Yes.
How do you find access? How has that gone with the child care providers and others to sort of accept this more standardized system?
Well, again, it was to our advantage that United Way and our early work called Smart Beginnings already had great relationships with a lot of providers. I think we have a history of multiple years of working with over 200 providers in the region. So that's a plus for us, right? And so what we did was, kind of recognize that we want to be able to draw students to these programs. They're not going to be in competition with each other. There's enough kids that need to be served, and kind of creating that atmosphere and that spirit of collaboration really was incredibly helpful. And so when we said, this is really for efficiency, this is about the parent and us, helping them navigate the system to find the program that is best fit for their family and help them out with by connecting them with resources to do that. I think can be a win-win for everybody.
Did you have resistance from childcare providers who didn't want to have to learn one more thing?
Yeah.
They already had our system is working fine. Did you encounter that?
Yeah, certainly. Like if particularly for programs that didn't have trouble recruiting, right? Their slots were already full, can't take anymore. And so that's okay. But for other providers, it actually gave them the ability to grow, to increase the number of classrooms because they were already doing quality work. And so it provided like a shared platform for promoting the good work that they were doing, and kind of elevated their status in the public as well.
And are you, I'm assuming I know the answer to this, but are you also helping with, a lot of times lesson planning and curriculum and making sure that what is going on in those facilities is actually helping the children? How are you all helping support those efforts?
Yes, so we, again, in partnership with the state, we have several grants that are really guiding providers in quality improvement efforts. So there are regular trainings that are happening, on-site observations, technical assistance. So we have people that are on site within our team working with over 200 providers within the region to kind of provide and elevate the overall quality of care. And particularly around this time where it's so challenging for a lot of our teachers, also giving them that moral support and helping them kind of navigate this crazy world that we're in.
Sure. So we're in the story business here at Blue Ridge PBS. So let's talk about some success stories. Can you? I'm sure as the CEO, you've got these that you can pull out of your hat. But tell me maybe some fairly specific stories that let you know you're on the right track.
Yeah. So it was very exciting to me. We launched this coordinated enrollment system in February 2020. We had all the partners there, and it was originally designed for parents to help connect with and find childcare 0 to 5.
Right.
Well, the pandemic happened, but it was also the perfect platform for us to be able to support school systems and early childhood providers and employers, because then more people were looking for childcare in order for them to be able to go back to work. And because the school system went on a virtual schedule, they had to have options for children that couldn't stay at home. And so we became the vehicle in partnership with the City of Roanoke, with Roanoke County Public School System, or the Roanoke City Schools, to be able to set up that same system and connect I believe we had over 600 students that were able to access virtual learning opportunities because of that same set. So to me, I'm like, that was kind of validation that I'm like, wow, this is needed, this is of value, and I cannot think about the impact that has, not just on the students that had a safe place to be in, but also for the parents that could get a little breather and not worry about where their kids were or what they were doing during the day.
The fact that you had already had something in place that you could then implement, that was huge, and I'm sure made a big difference for parents. Are there things you've kind of learned through COVID that, I don't want to say are good things, but like things that you've changed about the way you do things that you'll continue even after hopefully this ends within the foreseeable future?
Yeah, well, I think you said it in your introduction that in my spirit and with you, and I built into United Way is this whole spirit of collaboration. That's kind of the way to go. I don't think that's gonna ever go away. I think that's something that's been emphasized through the pandemic, that we truly are stronger together when we put our resources together, when we work together. and we come up with more innovative solutions that way. So I think United Way is going to forge in that path even more moving forward, and then also kind of thinking about an element around mental health. I think that's probably the one twist that in addition to basic needs, like food, shelter, clothing, you know, the things that we typically associate with, there's a very important element on mental health, resilience, and making sure that that's incorporated both at the level of our providers and also in the experience of our children at these different settings.
Yeah, I think that, you know, what COVID exposed helps us see what we need to do moving forward.
Yes.
And we are, believe it or not, we are nearing the end of our time. And as I close today, I just want to apologize for being able to talk about everything that this organization is doing. I encourage you to visit the United Way's website at uwrv.org. Abby, thanks again for taking the time to join us for What It Takes. I'm Tom Landon. Thanks for watching.